What's important from a government standpoint is creating an environment that's low tax, low regulation, that businesses want to come to. And then if you do that, I think the marketplace takes care of itself. Where we get conceited and where I think we become arrogant is where we feel like as politicians and as government officials that somehow we're smart enough to go out there and actually create the jobs. Government doesn't create the jobs. Government creates the playing field and the environment for industry to come in. And if we start to realize that that's our proper role, if we start to realize that what we should do is keep taxes low, reform the tort system so that punitive damages aren't on the line. I mean, do things that businesses look at when they decide to locate in states, the rest will take care of itself. Our problem is we think we're smarter than everybody else once we get elected. It's almost like once you get elected, maybe you get 30 more IQ points. And you can sit up there and make these decisions. And I think that's what holds us back as a state. So I guess it isn't so much what I think is important, number of jobs, high-paying jobs. I should look at what is it that businesses will look for when located in South Carolina, focus on those things, lower the taxes, create a level playing field, and then let the market take over. Yes, ma'am.
Hey, I'm Kenya, and after high school, I think I want to go to college for at least 8 to 10 years and get a doctor's degree. And what?
Wow, your parents know that?
Yeah.
That's great.
What can the state do better to budget for money other than general fund money?
That's a great question because a lot of times you talk about our budget, which we're talking about now, and it's going to be about $5.5, $5.6 billion. That's the general fund. That's the amount of money we collect in sales taxes and income taxes, and then we decide where it's spent. But that isn't all the budget we have. There's also, in addition to that $5.5 or $5.6 billion in general fund, there's $7.6 billion in what's called other funds. Those are fees and fines and things that state agencies levy against people and collect. Okay, they're not taxes, but it's still money moving from the private sector to government. So it has the same impact as taxes. You're taking money out of the private sector and you're moving it into the public sector. And so while we all talk about how the general fund has gone down from a high of about $7 billion in 2008 to about $5.1 billion last year and $5.5 billion this year, and that's a reduction, what you don't hear about as much is that in 2001, those other funds were about $4 billion. This year, it's $7.6, $7.7 billion. So as funds collected in taxes in the general fund have decreased, we've seen agencies make up for that by increasing their fees and fines in other funds. And we're never going to get our arms around the growth of government. We're never going to really control it until we stop looking at just the general fund. We've got to look at these other funds. And we haven't done that. If you go to most legislators, they can't even tell you, what that money goes for. Because what we've done in prior years is by statute, we have told agencies they can raise fees, they can raise fines, and they do it. But we have no control over it. We don't have any control over how much they raise, what the rate of increase is, what they spend it on. I mean, it's higher than the general fund. I mean, general fund $5.5 billion this year. Other funds is about $7.5, $7.6 billion that we don't control. So to answer your question, what can we do better to budget for money? I think we ought to take all those other funds and we ought to put them in the same pot as the general fund revenues and then appropriate them all out on the line so that we know where the money's going, and so we're truthful with the public as to what the amount of government spending is. Because I bet, did you think that somehow there were large budget cuts and that this year we're having to cut back and the government spending is lower? We're spending $652 million more this year than last year. Okay, it's not true. You're not being told the whole budgetary pot. That's changing. I mean, the people you've had coming in here talking to you are all reformers saying, look, we have to inform people on what really is going on. And up until about 2-3 years ago, before the Policy Council talked about, well, what about these other funds? No one knew about it. They were an automatic pilot. They're just collected and spent every year, and we never debated it. That's starting to change. Next question has to do with once the economy improves.
Hi, I'm Alex Guillaume, 15, and
hey.
After high school I plan to go to college. Once the economy improves, what can be done to keep the state from trying to restore agency budgets to pre-recession levels?
I think you have to have a spending cap. You have to have, and a spending cap not only in regard to the general fund, which we've talked about, but also in regard to fees and fines. And that spending cap ought to be inflation plus population growth. Okay, that's how much government can grow. And any amount of money above and beyond that ought to be sent back to the private sector. What you're seeing now in some of the spending cap bills that are out there right now that legislators talk about and brag about and say we're going to bring government spending under control is, they say, okay, we're going to have a population plus inflation rate of increase, and then there's going to be a cap. And every bit of money above and beyond that cap is going to go into a special rainy day account. All that does is it puts money in a place where they can find it and spend it. I mean, taking money above that cap and putting it into a rainy day account isn't controlling the growth of government. It's just putting the money in a place like shooting ducks at a pond where they can go in and spend it. You got to send money back to the private sector. That's the only way you're going to curb. Your question was, what can we do from budgets growing too high? You got to have a cap. The money's going to go back to the private sector. You know, they're going to talk about putting it into a reserve. They're going to talk about putting it into a rainy day account to guard against future downturns. That doesn't work. You got to get the money out of their hands, or they're going to spend it. So there's got to be a hard spending cap with dollars above the cap going back to the taxpayer. Question. Yes, sir.
I'm not a kid. I'm 17, and I plan on going to college after high school. If a county wants to provide economic development incentive to a business that's considering locating in the county, why should the state discourage the county from doing that?
First of all, I think the state ought to take care of state business. I mean, and what I've been talking about is in terms of incentives that state offers and exemptions and subsidies that state government offers. I believe in home rule. I believe in that the government closest to the people governs best. I mean, they're the ones, your county council officials, city council officials, they're the ones you see at the Publix and the Walmart and Target, you see them every day. They're accountable to you. If they want to do something down at the local level and they want to be accountable to their taxpayers, we ought at the state level ought not be second guessing them. I don't think it's a good idea, and if I were somebody at the county level, I'd be complaining to my county council member if they tried to do that. But again, that isn't my job up in Columbia to say to the folks down at the county level, tell them how to do their job. I mean, they're elected by the people too. And you know, if they think they've got a good idea, and if they want to make their case, they've got to run for re-election like everybody else, we ought to give them the leeway to do that. I think it's arrogant for the state to say we know best and then dictate downward. I think that's just bad policy. We do it all the time now.
I'm Taylor Lambert, and I'm not really sure what I'm doing. But I know
You're not sure?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
How old are you?
Oh, I'm 16.
You have plenty of time.
If school choice were to be permitted under the legislation that was proposed this session, how long would it have taken before we have seen a benefit? How would the benefit have been measured?
Well, to answer your last question first, how will the benefit be measured? I think it would be dictated by which schools attracted the most students. And I fundamentally believe in the free market and competition, and that makes a product better. I mean, I'm an attorney. You know, well, I used to be an attorney, not really anymore. But I was a real estate attorney primarily, and you charge a set fee, and you deliver a level of service. And I've got all these other law firms around the area that are competing against me. And so I've got to lower my price, and I've got to provide better service, or guess what? They're going to hire that other attorney to do the closing for them. And so with that pressure, you know, I used to charge $795 a closing, and I sat down with my paralegal and saying, we're not getting the business we should. We got to lower our price to $595. And then we sat down and said, well, we need to go ahead and promise the realtors that their clients will turn the closing around in 3 days. And so you come up with a way to create your product better and to make it cheaper. And the reason you do that is because if I don't, they're going to go someplace else. What you're missing in our education system overall is that sense of competition and that sense of, if you don't provide excellence, kids won't necessarily go somewhere else because they have to go to a certain zone. They've got to go to a certain zip code. I mean, that's how you're assigned. And so regardless of the quality, regardless of how great Kelly Payton's program is, she can't have people from outside the area come in here and come here because they're zoned for that area. So how would you measure the results? I think that parents would decide to send their kids to those schools and those teachers that are actually doing a good job. And you ought to let that market system work, because all of a sudden you're going to see a level of scrutiny about how you conduct your business in schools from principals and teachers to differentiate